Pinyon juniper woodlands span millions of acres across the western United States and support diverse, interconnected ecosystems. In northern Wyoming, limber pine woodlands serve a similar ecological role. At the center of these systems is the pinyon jay, a highly social corvid whose life history is closely tied to pine woodlands. Across their range, pinyon jay populations have declined by over 80% since the 1970s, making them one of the most rapidly declining bird species in North America. In Wyoming's Bighorn Basin, limber pine woodlands face multiple threats, including white pine blister rust, dwarf mistletoe, and mountain pine beetle, all of which are exacerbated by a changing climate. These pressures compound habitat loss from development, energy infrastructure, and land management activities, elevating conservation concerns for pinyon jays and the ecosystems they maintain. Begun in 2024, the Pinyon Jay study was designed to address critical knowledge gaps by examining annual pinyon jay use of lands managed by the Bureau of Land Management throughout the year. Understanding their ecology on these multiple-use landscapes is essential for balancing competing land and wildlife management objectives. The study focused on identifying important habitat features, understanding movement patterns, and documenting behaviors related to foraging, nesting, and social organization. This information is critical for land management decisions, particularly where pinyon jay habitat overlaps with sage-grouse priority areas. Building on the 2024 field season's extensive surveys across limber pine habitats in the Bighorn Basin and trapping efforts, 2025 was dedicated to recapturing GPS-tagged birds and visiting locations where tagged birds were recorded. At field sites where flocks are known to visit, the team began to document habitat health, assessing trees for threats such as white pine blister rust, dwarf mistletoe, and mountain pine beetle. On newly trapped and recaptured birds, the team continued to collect morphometric measurements and assess disease indicators. Fieldwork required close coordination among scientists, land managers and owners, and conservation partners.
You've been a part of this project since the beginning, so we're only 2 years in. Hopefully this goes on for much longer. But just in that short of a window, how has your perspective of the pinyon jay changed?
I learned how unique they are, and I've learned so much more about them. You know, even casually watching them, I missed things, but being around true birders and professionals, it's like, you know, you notice that the juveniles are begging. You notice their different calls. And now that they've got bands on them, it's like they're old friends. They come back.
Pinyon jays play a critical ecological role as seed dispersers. Through the collection and caching of pine seeds, they directly influence seed dispersal, forest regeneration, and woodland structure. This relationship is especially important in the face of mounting environmental pressures.
The memory of the seed caches is really fascinating. There are cells in the hippocampus that fire or become activated when they are in particular places on the ground, place cells. And so you can think of that as basically dropping a pin on a map, that's a location that's important to you. And then when you come, rather than having to look at your GPS and have it go off when you get close to there, there's some stimulation in the brain when you get close to that site again, and it keys you in to dig there. So those, as far as I know, and this has been shown in chickadees and nutcrackers and pinyon jays, is basically as those memories are formed during the autumn, they persist throughout the harvest period, which would be through the winter and into the spring, presumably, maybe even well into the spring. And as they recover caches, those pins are taken out, basically, of the hippocampus, and they can build new ones in the next fall. So they last throughout the harvest season.
Management actions designed to improve sage-grouse habitat, such as removing conifers, can inadvertently eliminate critical nesting and foraging habitat for pinyon jays. The team's work to document pinyon jay nesting and foraging habitat is critical to understand these trade-offs. This will aid management strategies to support multiple species on BLM lands. By grounding conservation decisions in field-based science, the study represents a meaningful step towards sustaining limber pine ecosystems in northern Wyoming, the species that depend on them, and the multiple human uses these landscapes support. The growing body of data gathered by the team is expanding our understanding of pinyon jays in the Bighorn Basin, while also feeding into a nationwide assessment of the species status and conservation needs across the bird's range.